Hi Danny, Grace and Jude. This is correction insulin. So we've already discussed about meal insulin. This is about correction insulin when the glucose level is high to bring you back down into target. So let's have a look. 3 things you'll need to work out a correction dose. The first thing is the target level of where you want to correct down to. So most people will choose 5 or 5.5 millimoles per litre or 100 milligrams per decilitre, a good place to aim for, bang in the middle of target. Then you'll need a correction factor, how much 1 unit of fast-acting insulin will drop the glucose level by. That'll either be in millimoles per litre, for example 1 unit drops the glucose by 3.0 millimoles per litre, or it'll be milligrams per decilitre, in this case 54 milligrams per decilitre, how much 1 unit of extra insulin will drop the glucose by. And then you need where your current glucose level is, so you know how far above target you are, and then you can divide it by the correction factor. And important to recognise here, just the same as bolus insulin, when you give a correction, often it will still go high in the first part. It takes 90 minutes to 2 hours to kick in, and it only brings the glucose level back into target after 3 hours and eventually back down to where you want it to after 4. So it's a 4-hour process when you give a correction dose for it to bring you from above target back into target. Let's have a look at an example. So you can see here, current glucose level minus target glucose level divided by correction factor. So let's take at breakfast. The glucose level is 11. We want to get to 5.5, and then you divide it by 3, comes to 1.8 units. Or if milligrams per decilitre at 200 minus 100 where we want to be, divide by 54 gives the same 1.8 units. So this is an example. We're at 11. You give the 1.8 unit correction. It still is going higher, and then eventually the correction starts kicking after 90 minutes, 2 hours, and it brings it back down to target 3 to 4 hours after. The reason why this is important to understand is, although it's fast-acting insulin, it doesn't work very fast. And when you're using continuous glucose monitor, what happens is you look at it after 90 minutes and you go, wow, that is not working. Let's throw another correction dose in. Then you end up stacking loads of insulin, and then the glucose level comes down too fast and makes you hypo. Let me show you an example of this. So in dynamic glucose management, we'll touch on my Christmas Day 2018, but this is essentially what happens. You eat a meal which is high in fat and you've got lots of insulin resistance from it. The glucose level starts to go high. You throw in 1 correction dose. You look 30 to almost 40 minutes after, it's still going high. You throw in another correction dose. It's still high. You throw in another, and another, and another. Then all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 correction doses all stacking on top of each other. Then bang, you start to drop like a stone. You start to panic, and then you throw in loads of carbs, and then you go flying up the other side. And the real reason is because in the old days where you only had finger pricks, you only had a decision to make every 90 minutes to 3 hours. So therefore you could only ever throw 1 or 2 extra correction doses in. Now you've got continuous glucose monitor, you can get carried away and giddy and start throwing in correction doses every hour because you want to start seeing it move down. So there's a big mismatch between how slow insulin is and how frequent that you check your CGM. And that's something that's really hard to overcome. And when we get into continuous glucose monitoring, dynamic glucose management, I'll show you a better way of managing high glucose levels between meals. So in summary, correction insulin brings excess glucose back into the cells, but it does take 90 to 120 minutes to peak and 3 to 4 hours to complete. It's actually quite slow. It can lead to the stacking of insulin because you're looking at the CGM every 30 minutes, just like my Christmas Day 2018. And then that can lead to stacking and nasty hypos. So as you're probably thinking, there must be a faster way to drop the glucose level between meals that doesn't leave a nasty hangover. And that's why we're going to move next to activity and exercise.